Before the rise of empires, before the first written words, there were quarries, silent wounds carved into the earth, where stone was cut on a scale so vast, so precise, that even today we struggle to comprehend how it was done. Who carved these monoliths? What tools could split mountains and leave behind blocks weighing thousands of tons? And why does so much of this work seem far beyond the reach of ancient hands? Tonight, we journey into the forgotten quarries of prehistory, where the earth itself still carries the fingerprints of a civilization lost to time. The Baalbek Quarry. In the quiet hills of Lebanon, not far from the ancient temple complex of Baalbek, lies a place that feels almost ordinary at first sight. It is just a quarry, a hollowed stretch of limestone, touched by the sun and brushed by the wind. But hidden here is one of the most baffling and awe-inspiring mysteries the ancient world has left behind. Resting half-freed from the earth, its weight pressing down like time itself, lies the stone of the pregnant woman, a single block of limestone that stretches nearly 70 feet long and rises 14 feet high. When people first measured it, they realized it was not just another stone. It weighed more than 1,200 tons, more than 200 elephants standing together. And yet this was no mountain left behind by nature. It was shaped, cut, and prepared by human hands, thousands of years ago. One side of its base remains still tethered to the bedrock, as though caught in mid-motion, a frozen moment of labor. You can almost imagine the workers who once crowded around it, chisels in hand, their voices echoing against the quarry walls, dust rising with each strike, unaware that the world thousands of years later would stare in disbelief at what they had tried to do. Why would they attempt this? What purpose required such a block, a stone so immense that even modern cranes and machines would struggle to shift it? The thought lingers like a whisper: did they know something we no longer know? When you look closely, the stone carries strange marks, striations, as though cut with methods we do not fully understand. Some scholars call them tool marks, others see something that feels almost mechanical, and yet the quarry is silent now, and those who left the marks left no record of the tools that carved them. In Switzerland, at Jungfrau Park, engineers once built a model to demonstrate how many modern cranes it would take to lift this one block. The answer was unsettling. Even with the strongest cranes arranged in every direction, there simply wasn't enough space around the stone for them to work. Even if you lifted it, how would you carry it across the uneven terrain to the temple? The stone seems to laugh at the question. It is too large, too heavy, too still, and yet it waits here as if mocking our sense of progress. But the story does not end with this single block. In 2014, after years of slow excavation, something even more shocking was revealed beneath it. Archaeologists from the German Archaeological Institute, working with Lebanese researchers, uncovered another monolith, still buried, larger than the stone of the pregnant woman. This second block weighed more than 1,650 tons. It is the largest stone ever quarried by human hands in all of recorded history. It became known as the Forgotten Stone, though one wonders how such immensity could ever truly be forgotten. When placed side by side in photographs, the difference between the two is staggering. One already seems impossible, the other even more so, and here lies the strangest thought of all. If this was not even the final block, if others may still be buried deeper, what limits were the ancients trying to test? Were they proving a point, reaching for something beyond possibility, or did they already know a way to make the impossible work? The quarry itself feels like a library of questions carved into stone. Who stood here, thousands of years ago, imagining a temple built with blocks so large they seemed beyond human reach? What hands dared to strike against limestone, knowing each cut drew them closer to shaping a stone heavier than mountains? And perhaps most haunting of all, why did they stop? Was it a mistake, a miscalculation in size or weight? Did cracks in the stone doom the project before it began? Or did some greater mystery intervene, a decision lost to history, leaving these giants half-born in the earth too large to move, too strange to leave behind? The air around Baalbek grows quiet when you let yourself picture it. The sun warms the limestone, shadows stretch slowly across the surface, and the stones themselves seem to breathe with patience. The stone of the pregnant woman lies tilted, caught between earth and sky, and the forgotten stone remains hidden, a giant still dreaming in the ground. These stones are not ruins like a broken temple wall or a scattered shard of pottery. They are living enigmas, puzzles too heavy to be lifted, too immense to ignore. They whisper that the world once held a knowledge we cannot easily imagine, and they remind us that sometimes the past does not reveal answers, only deeper questions. When you close your eyes, you can almost hear the quarry as it once was, the sound of chisels striking, the murmur of voices, the scraping of stone against stone. But now, silence, just the weight of time, pressing down. And as you breathe slowly, as you picture those stones resting under the Lebanese sky, you realize that the quarry does not need to give up its secrets tonight. It waits, and it will keep waiting. For centuries it has kept its silence, and perhaps for centuries more, it will remain the same. And like the stone, you too can rest, letting the questions settle, letting the weight of the day grow still, letting the mystery remain. Vertical incisions. If you stand before the ancient stones of China, and you let your eyes trace their surfaces slowly, what you begin to notice are not the rough edges you would expect from primitive tools, not the uneven marks of chisels or hammers striking again and again, but instead, something far stranger, perfectly straight, vertical incisions. They run up and down the rock faces with a precision that feels deliberate, as though they were carved not by hand, but by something mechanical, something beyond the reach of Bronze Age technology. And once you notice these lines, you see them everywhere, etched into cliffs, hidden in cave walls, stretching along abandoned quarries. They are the silent scars of a forgotten effort, vast in scale, careful in execution, and utterly baffling in origin. Take for instance the Yangshan quarry, lying quietly on the outskirts of Nanjing. This is the place where humanity's largest known stone blocks rest, abandoned mid-cut, too massive even for our modern machinery to dream of moving. Among the half-carved monoliths, the vertical incisions are visible, like ruler-straight guides etched into the living rock. The surfaces are smooth, the lines regular, as if a gigantic saw blade once hummed against the stone, slicing upward and downward, leaving behind its unmistakable signature. Imagine the sound it would have made if it were real, a low, resonant grinding, echoing across the quarry, stone dust drifting in the air. A machine whose power we cannot even picture. Now let your thoughts drift to the Longyu Caves, another Chinese enigma. These vast, hand-hewn chambers stretch deep beneath the earth, their walls covered in fine parallel striations. Some of them are diagonal, but many are strikingly vertical, as if enormous tools had methodically scraped away layer after layer of stone. Archaeologists still cannot explain how, in antiquity, millions of cubic meters of rock could have been extracted with such consistency. If the caves had truly been dug with nothing but chisels and hammers, we would expect rough, uneven surfaces. Instead, we find smooth walls, marked with precise grooves that repeat, unwavering, across chambers the size of cathedrals. At Huashan grottos, too, the mystery deepens. Here dozens of vast underground halls lie beneath the mountains, their ceilings soaring high, their columns carefully left to support the cavernous spaces. And once again, the vertical incisions appear, straight, parallel, endless in repetition, as if carved by the same unseen hand that worked at Longyu, at Yangshan, and perhaps at other sites yet undiscovered. The pattern is undeniable. Across sites, separated by miles, and by centuries, the same marks emerge, as though an ancient technique lost to time was once widespread, a shared knowledge now vanished from human memory. Pause here for a moment, and let your imagination breathe. What if these vertical incisions are not random quirks of excavation, but evidence of a forgotten technology? Imagine, if you will, a tool larger than anything we know, perhaps something like a vertical cutting saw, or a massive vibrating blade, guided not by guesswork, but by precision engineering. Picture the workers of that time, not with bronze chisels in their hands, but standing in awe as machines beyond their own understanding reshaped the very mountains before them. Could it be that what we are looking at are the footprints of machines long gone, machines whose remains have crumbled away, leaving only the marks of their work? Skeptics will tell you it's simple. They'll say the grooves are just the result of hand tools used with remarkable persistence. But if you let your eyes linger on those incisions, you sense something more. Each cut is too straight, too regular, almost mathematical in its execution. They rise vertically with no wavering, no irregularity, no hesitation. If you gave 10 men hammers and chisels and told them to carve a wall, you would get uneven lines, jagged surfaces, irregular depth. But what we see here is consistency. Stone surfaces carved like butter, walls smoothed as though by industrial machinery, and it makes you wonder, who, or what, really carved these places? Consider, too, the sheer scale of the task. In Longyu alone, estimates suggest that over 1 million cubic meters of stone were removed. That is not the work of a few generations of farmers with chisels. That is the work of a civilization organized on a grand scale, equipped with methods efficient enough to dig vast halls and leave behind walls polished with vertical incisions. Why go to such lengths underground? Why carve out these monumental spaces and leave them empty, with no inscriptions, no relics, no records? Perhaps the answer lies not in the emptiness, but in the cuts themselves, the vertical lines that whisper of a forgotten process, a purpose we no longer understand. Now imagine yourself standing in one of these caverns. The air is cool, still, heavy with silence. Your footsteps echo softly on the stone floor, and as your eyes adjust to the dim light, you see the walls rising around you, covered in those strange vertical lines. They stretch up into darkness, parallel and unbroken, as though the entire chamber had been sculpted by a single steady hand. You run your fingers along the grooves. They feel deliberate, engineered. In the quiet, you can almost hear the distant sound of stone being cut, as though the machines still hum in memory, their echoes preserved in the incisions themselves. The connection to other megalithic mysteries cannot be ignored. At Baalbek, the great trilithon stones show similar striations. At Pumapunku in Bolivia, blocks bear sharp geometric cuts that look more machined than carved. Across the world, we find evidence of techniques too advanced for the times we assign them to. And here in China, the vertical incisions bind the puzzle together, suggesting that whatever force shaped Baalbek, whatever hand carved Pumapunku, might have also left its mark on Yangshan, Longyu, and Huashan. Slowly, gently, let your mind rest on the possibility that human history is deeper and stranger than we know. That beneath the official stories and tidy timelines, there are chapters written not in ink but in stone. Chapters where civilizations rose, mastered techniques of unimaginable power, and then fell, leaving behind only mysteries for us to puzzle over. The vertical incisions, simple though they may appear, could be fragments of that lost knowledge, a subtle but enduring clue, carved into the earth itself. And so when we look at these grooves, these perfectly straight vertical lines, we are not merely looking at marks on stone. We are staring into a question that has no answer. Were they the result of patient, unrecorded labor by simple tools? Or were they the fingerprints of a forgotten science, a technology that came and went long before us? The incisions do not tell us, they only wait, silent, immovable, challenging us to keep wondering, to keep searching, and to keep asking how much of our story remains hidden beneath the surface of time. The wild grandeur of Mount Nokogiri and the mystery of Monument Valley. Beneath the soft morning haze of Japan, where the horizon blends mountain ridges with drifting sea clouds, there lies a place both silent and puzzling. Mount Nokogiri. Its very name means saw mountain, a name born from the peculiar way its ridges rise like the teeth of a blade. Sharp, repetitive, almost unnatural in their form. From a distance it looks like a mountain touched by hands far too precise for nature. As you walk closer, you begin to notice towering vertical walls, cut so straight and so exact that they appear as though they were not carved by chisels, but sliced as though with machines. Some of these walls rise nearly 100 feet into the sky, sheer plains of stone that seem almost too clean, too deliberate, to be the work of the Edo period quarrying that history books so confidently describe. The official story is simple enough. It tells us that during the 17th century, Mount Nokogiri was quarried for its stone, that workers cut blocks from its flanks for construction in Edo, what is now Tokyo. Yet as you stand before these immense vertical walls, the story begins to feel thin, like a surface layer hiding something much older. The edges are too straight, the symmetry too exact, the scale far beyond what seems reasonable for men with hammers and chisels. As your eyes trace the sheer lines, you cannot help but wonder, were these cuts the work of Edo-era craftsmen, or was the mountain already marked, long before, by hands from a civilization now forgotten? Walk slowly, step by step, and let your thoughts drift. Imagine a time not recorded in history, a time when advanced techniques existed in an age we no longer understand. The lines at Nokogiri echo those found at distant, far-flung sites. They call to mind the stonework of Pumapunku in Bolivia, where blocks are shaped with angles so sharp and surfaces so smooth, they look as though they were sliced by diamond-tipped saws, not hammered by stone tools. They call to mind the unfinished monoliths of Yangshan Quarry in China, where a block of stone weighing 16,000 tons lies half-cut, as though abandoned by giants. The strange striations visible on the walls of Nokogiri mirror those at Hushan grottos, at Longyu caves, at Baalbek itself, as if scattered across continents the same ancient hand left its fingerprints in stone. Pause for a moment in this imagining. The wind moves gently through the trees that cling to Nokogiri's ridges. The calls of birds echo softly, but your mind is still fixed on the walls that seem like the skeleton of an enormous lost project. Did the ancients begin something here, and never finish? Or did the Edo craftsmen inherit a place already cut, already shaped, using it again without truly knowing its origins? Now let us travel, slowly, across oceans and deserts, to another land of wonder and silence. Far from Japan, in the red earth landscapes of America, there lies Monument Valley. Rising from the desert floor are colossal towers of sandstone, flat-topped mesas, and buttes that glow crimson under the setting sun. To most, Monument Valley is simply a breathtaking natural wonder, a geological sculpture formed by millions of years of wind and rain. Yet for the Navajo people, and for countless visitors who feel its aura, the valley carries a presence that is more than geology. It feels alive, mysterious, as though the stones themselves remember stories long forgotten. Imagine standing in the center of the valley, where the horizon stretches endlessly, and all around you are towering stone giants. Each one looks sculpted, shaped with intent, their sheer vertical sides rising like walls of an ancient fortress. The silence is immense, broken only by the whisper of the desert wind. Here too the human mind drifts into questions. Were these shapes truly the slow work of erosion alone, or is there something more? Could some of these formations have once been altered, adjusted, or revered by hands that saw them as monuments in the truest sense? The ancients of the region spoke of spirits that dwelled in the valley, of ancestors and beings whose power shaped the land. To them, Monument Valley was not merely a desert, it was a sacred place, a living memory in stone. And when you compare the sharp ridges, the massive flat-sided towers to the quarry walls of Nokogiri, an odd connection forms, one shaped by tools, the other shaped by nature, or perhaps both shaped by forces we do not yet fully grasp. Picture this flow now. From the saw-cut cliffs of Japan, across oceans to the desert towers of America, there is a rhythm in the stones. They speak in silence, hinting at a story that stretches beyond culture, beyond geography, beyond time. Was there a forgotten chapter of humanity, a civilization or knowledge system that linked these places together? Not through roads or ships, but through some shared technique, some lost understanding of stone itself. Let your breath slow here, as though matching the timeless stillness of these landscapes. Each cut in the quarry wall, each shadowed mesa in the desert, becomes part of the same dream. The more you study them, the more they blur the line between what we call natural and what we call man-made. Nokogiri whispers with its impossibly straight lines, while Monument Valley whispers with its impossibly sculpted giants. Together, they suggest that perhaps the earth still holds chapters of our story that we have not yet read. And as you imagine the sun setting slowly over the valley, painting the stones in shades of gold and deep crimson, your thoughts begin to drift. The quarry walls of Japan, the mesas of America, the ancient voices of forgotten hands, all blend into one long, endless memory of stone. A memory waiting patiently, like a book unopened, for us to finally understand. Monument Valley Mystery Blocks. If you close your eyes and picture the American West, the image that often rises is Monument Valley. Towering red buttes, mesas rising like guardians from the desert floor, shadows stretching across the sands as the sun dips low on the horizon. It is a place so iconic that it has appeared in countless films, paintings, and photographs. The Navajo Nation, where Monument Valley lies, treats this landscape with reverence. To stand among its rock towers is to feel time itself flowing differently. The rocks whispering of eras so ancient that human history feels like a heartbeat against their vast silence. But among the grand spires and sweeping views, there is a quieter, stranger mystery, one that lies not in the shapes carved by wind and rain, but in something that feels almost impossibly precise. North of the well-known valley, beyond the familiar postcard images, there exists a formation that does not look like the playful chaos of erosion. Instead, it looks like intention. It looks like geometry. Here, great blocks of sandstone lie carved into cubes and rectangles, each one possessing sharp, clean, 90-degree angles. Their faces are flat, their edges straight, their proportions exact, as though some colossal hand or some forgotten technology had sliced them free with the precision of a blade. Some of these blocks measure nearly 21 feet on each side. Think of that for a moment. 21 feet by 21 feet by 21 feet, each block a cube so massive it weighs hundreds of tons. To walk among them is to feel as though you are in a quarry, but a quarry that no one remembers, a quarry with no records, no tools, no workers. Some of the blocks are missing, as though lifted out long ago, leaving gaps like missing teeth in an enormous stone puzzle. Others remain, resting in perfect rows, waiting. Waiting for what? That is the question that lingers. The sandstone cliffs here are the same material that shapes Monument Valley itself. Sandstone, as we know, is a sedimentary rock. It does not break cleanly into cubes or smooth-faced slabs without effort. Nature, through wind and rain and time, tends toward irregularity, jagged edges, crumbling surfaces, uneven cracks. But here, the stone is different. It is as if someone, or something, cut into the earth with a machine of immense size and power, leaving behind smooth faces and sharp angles, surfaces polished to a perfection that feels almost alien in the natural desert. When measured, these blocks are not simply large, they are enormous, weighing 600, 700, even 900 tons each. For comparison, the largest blocks at Baalbek in Lebanon, which have baffled archaeologists for generations, weigh around 1,200 tons. Yet those stones were clearly part of human construction. Here in Monument Valley, we find blocks nearly as massive, but with no temples, no walls, no monuments, nothing built from them. They lie in silence, cut and waiting, as if a project began and was suddenly abandoned. Adding to the mystery are the petroglyphs, ancient drawings etched into the stone by the Navajo. They depict humanoid figures, etched with simple but powerful strokes alongside spirals. The spiral is a powerful symbol in Navajo tradition. To the Navajo, time is not linear, stretching in a straight line from past to future. Instead, it is cyclical. Ages repeat. Worlds rise and fall. The spiral reminds us that civilizations come and go, that cataclysms sweep the earth, and that what seems eternal can vanish in an instant. In Navajo myth, the buttes and mesas of Monument Valley are not simply rock. They are the bodies of beings destroyed by the gods, ancient giants whose forms were left behind as reminders of the dangers of pride and conflict. The holy people, as the Navajo call them, shaped the land, guided humanity, and sometimes punished those who strayed from the proper path. One legend tells of earlier worlds destroyed, one by fire, one by conflict, one by flood. The great flood story echoes across the world, and in Navajo tradition, as in the biblical tale of Noah, it marks the end of an age, sweeping away an entire civilization. Could the rectangular blocks north of Monument Valley be relics of such a forgotten world? Could they be the remains of a project begun in some distant age, by a people wiped away by cataclysm? Fossilized coral has been found in the rocks here, evidence that this desert was once under the sea. If the land was covered by water, could a flood indeed have destroyed an earlier civilization, leaving behind the silent quarry as one of its only traces? The mind cannot help but wander. You picture workers, perhaps thousands of years ago, or tens of thousands, cutting into the cliffs with tools we cannot imagine, freeing these enormous cubes from the earth. Perhaps they planned to move them, to build some monumental structure, a city of stone blocks larger than anything we know. And then, something happened. A disaster. A collapse. A flood that swept them away, leaving only the beginnings of their work, half finished, half buried. Of course, geology has another explanation. Sandstone forms in layers, deposited grain by grain, compressed over eons. Natural fractures develop, called joints, along which the stone may break. Over time, as wind and water erode these joints, the rock can fracture into blocks, sometimes surprisingly regular. Across the world, we find examples of nature's geometry. The hexagonal basalt columns of the Giant's Causeway in Ireland, the organ pipe formations of Devil's Postpile in California, the cathedral-like caves of Staffa in Scotland. All of them are natural, yet their shapes look deliberate, as though carved by hand. But here lies the difference. Basalt fractures hexagonally because of the way lava cools. Sandstone, however, does not fracture this way. It tends toward irregular shapes, crumbling slabs, not perfect cubes. That is why the Monument Valley blocks stand out. They look too precise, too engineered, too much like something cut, rather than broken. Stand before one of these sandstone cubes, and place your hand on its face. It is smooth, unnaturally so. Look along its edge. It meets its neighbor in a line so straight you could use it as a guide. Step back and measure. 21 feet by 21 feet. Perfect. Coincidence can explain much, but perfection, repeated again and again, begins to stretch coincidence to breaking, and then, the missing blocks. Some spaces look as though their stones have been removed, taken away, as though by hands or machines, long gone. If it were natural, why would whole cubes vanish, leaving neat voids behind? Why would the site resemble a half-finished construction yard more than a weathered cliff? It leaves us with two possibilities. One, that this is a natural formation so precise it feels artificial, a geological masterpiece sculpted by time into geometry. Two, that it is not natural at all, but the quarry of a forgotten civilization, whose tools and records are lost, but whose stones remain, silent and waiting. As the desert wind moves across the valley, carrying with it the whispers of Navajo stories, you can almost imagine the answer lies somewhere in between. Perhaps nature shaped the stone, but ancient hands recognized its potential and began to carve. Perhaps the site was sacred, chosen for reasons we cannot yet understand. Perhaps the spiral etched into the rock is more than a symbol, it is a reminder. Civilizations rise, civilizations fall, and in their wake, they leave mysteries for those who come later. So Monument Valley is not just a place of beauty, it is not only a symbol of the American West, it is also a riddle, cut into sandstone, lying quietly north of the familiar monuments, waiting for us to ask, who carved the cubes, who lifted the blocks, and what story, now erased, once connected them all. Natural formations or ancient precision. Looking at the precise angles and smooth surfaces of the gigantic blocks in the Navajo Nation, it is hard not to feel a sense of wonder. The shapes appear deliberate, almost crafted, as though an unknown hand carved them long ago. They rise in geometric precision, some as if they were cut by machines, others resembling giant cubes stacked upon one another like pieces of some forgotten puzzle. To the naked eye, these sandstone blocks bear a striking resemblance to massive man-made constructions, yet geologists suggest that their origin may lie in entirely natural processes. The resemblance to other mysterious stones across the globe cannot be overlooked. When you see the carefully hewn blocks at Baalbek in Lebanon, weighing hundreds of tons each, it becomes natural to draw parallels. Baalbek stones are proven to be man-made, cut and transported by human hands, though how ancient people achieved this remains an open question. With the Navajo blocks, however, the situation is more complex. Their surfaces, edges, and 90-degree angles provoke questions, but there remains the possibility that these forms emerged not from human craftsmanship, but from the silent, relentless work of nature. To understand this possibility, we must step back millions of years into the slow processes that shape the Earth's surface. Sandstone, the material from which these mysterious formations are made, begins its life as nothing more than grains of sand, tiny fragments of rock, eroded and carried by wind and water, deposited in basins, riverbeds, or shallow seas. Over time, layer upon layer accumulates, pressing downward with immense weight. The pressure compacts the grains tightly together, and minerals such as quartz or calcite seep into the gaps, cementing them into solid rock. This transformation, sedimentation followed by lithification, creates sandstone. But sandstone itself does not typically fracture into perfect cubes. What forces could account for such uncanny shapes? Here we turn to tectonics. As Earth's plates shift and collide, they bend and crack the crust, producing joints, faults, and lines of weakness. Over millions of years, water infiltrates these cracks. Freeze-thaw cycles expand them, winds scour them, and rain erodes the rock away. Slowly, entire sections of stone are separated along these natural planes of weakness. The result? Large block-like structures that mimic the careful chiseling of human hands. Yet even with this explanation, something still feels unsettling. Nature can indeed produce geometric wonders, but the Navajo blocks are not alone in raising eyebrows. Across our planet, countless formations have challenged our sense of what is natural versus what is artificial. Let us journey to these sites, for in exploring them, we may understand how the Earth sometimes plays the role of sculptor, rivaling even the precision of human engineering. Consider the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland. Along its rugged coast, about 40,000 basalt columns stand like an army of hexagonal towers. Their sides fit so perfectly together that it resembles a massive stone pavement, crafted with mathematical exactness. Scientists explain this as the result of volcanic activity some 60 million years ago, when molten lava met the cool sea and fractured as it hardened. Yet standing there, surrounded by these endless stone pillars, one cannot help but question whether some ancient architect left behind the foundations of a forgotten city. In California, the Devil's Postpile Monument offers a similar wonder. Here, towering columns of basalt rise like the pipes of a cathedral organ. Again, the explanation lies in cooling lava flows, which contracted and cracked into vertical shafts. These shafts are so uniform, so cleanly defined, that even trained geologists admit that at first glance they seem too precise for nature. Further north, in Iceland, Svartifoss, the Black Falls, cascades through a backdrop of perfectly ordered basalt columns. The waterfall has inspired architects and artists alike, including the design of Iceland's famous Hallgrímskirkja church, which mimics the natural stone forms. Once more, volcanic activity and cooling explain the formation, but the human mind inevitably interprets the columns as designed rather than accidental. Even more haunting is Fingal's Cave on the island of Staffa in Scotland. Its entrance is framed by towering columns that create the illusion of a man-made temple or cathedral, complete with vaulted ceilings. The sea echoes through it like the voice of some ancient deity. Local legends say the cave was built by giants, tying geology with mythology in the same way the Navajo link their sacred lands with stories of holy beings. The Czech Republic, too, offers its own marvel in Panská skala, often nicknamed the Organ Pipes. This formation consists of vertical basalt columns rising in orderly fashion from the earth, almost as if some forgotten stonemason had left behind a half-finished masterpiece. Again, nature provides the explanation, but our instincts lean toward human craftsmanship. All of these examples share something vital. They demonstrate that natural processes can mimic the work of skilled hands. But even within this category, the Navajo sandstone blocks remain unique. They are not volcanic basalt, which naturally fractures into geometric columns. They are sedimentary sandstone, which does not usually cleave into such perfect cubes. This difference deepens the mystery, blurring the line between natural geology and possible human interference. Adding to the enigma are the Navajo myths themselves. According to their traditions, Monument Valley and the surrounding lands were formed by the holy people. The buttes and mesas are said to be the petrified remains of ancient beings destroyed in cycles of creation and destruction. In their cosmology, time is not linear, but cyclical. Worlds rise and fall, civilizations are destroyed and reborn. The spiral carvings seen on nearby rocks symbolize this eternal cycle. Could it be that these cubic blocks were part of a forgotten world, erased by catastrophe, now explained away as natural geology? Science points us toward tectonic forces, erosion, and sedimentary layering. Myth points us toward gods, cycles, and ancient civilizations. Between these explanations lies a gap, a silence, that fuels curiosity. Were the massive 21-foot cubes once part of an ancient quarry, left behind by a civilization erased from memory? Or is this yet another example of Earth's uncanny ability to sculpt forms that fool the human eye? The evidence of coral fossils scattered across the site adds yet another layer of mystery. Fossils suggest that the land was once submerged beneath water, perhaps millions of years ago. If the blocks were shaped naturally, then the ocean itself played a role in sculpting them. If they were shaped by ancient humans, then perhaps those humans lived along shores that no longer exist, wiped out in floods or tectonic upheavals. This tension between geology and human history defines so many of Earth's great mysteries. At Baalbek, we know humans worked the stones, yet we cannot explain how. At the Navajo Nation, we marvel at the precision, yet cannot prove human hands were ever involved. Perhaps the truth is that nature and humanity have always danced together, each leaving marks upon the earth, each shaping the story in ways we may never fully unravel. So the question remains, when you stand before the cubic sandstone blocks, do you see the hand of nature, patient and unyielding over millions of years? Or do you see the ghostly traces of a civilization lost to floods, myths, and time itself? The Yangshan Quarry and the giant megalithic block. Far from the bustling city streets of modern Nanjing, in the quiet hills that cradle the Yangshan Quarry, rests one of the most puzzling enigmas in human history. This quarry, like so many others across the world, appears at first to be nothing more than a scar in the earth. A place where stone was once pulled free to build monuments long forgotten, but hidden within its carved walls lies something that stretches the very limits of imagination. It is here that we find the colossal megalithic block, a single unfinished stone that has left scholars, engineers, and dreamers alike in awe. The block is not simply large, not merely heavy, it is unfathomably vast, estimated to weigh more than 16,000 tons. To put that into perspective, imagine the already impossible stones of Baalbek in Lebanon, where the stone of the pregnant woman lies at 1,200 tons. That block, already considered one of the greatest engineering feats of antiquity, is dwarfed by what rests here in China. The Yangshan block is more than 13 times heavier. Even with our strongest modern machines, our most advanced cranes, our most intricate methods of lifting and moving, such a block would remain stubbornly still. We could surround it with technology, fill the quarry with the engines of industry, and still, it would not budge. The weight is simply too great, the challenge too immense. And yet someone long ago envisioned its movement, its placement, and perhaps its purpose. Walking among the quarry's walls, one can still trace the outlines where chisels once bit into the earth, where laborers cut and shaped with deliberate precision. The block was not a natural accident, it was carved, it was designed, it was meant for something. Some believe it was destined for the Ming Shaoling Mausoleum, the grand resting place of the Hongwu Emperor, the founder of the Ming dynasty. Legends suggest it was to become a towering stele, rising into the sky as a monument to power and eternity. But the task was never completed. The block was left unfinished, half embraced by the quarry that still clings to it, and so it sits, silent, enormous, haunting in its immobility, as though the earth itself refuses to let go. It is easy to picture the workers who once stood here, perhaps thousands of them, hammering and chiseling, day after day, under the open sky. Perhaps overseers watched from the ridges, planning how such an impossible mass could ever be freed, shifted, and set upright. The sound of tools against stone must have echoed through the valley, the air filled with dust, the heat of the sun bearing down. Yet for all their effort, they were confronted with a truth that even today remains unchanged. The block was too large to move, too heavy, too vast, and so it was abandoned, left like a sleeping giant on the hillside, its secret purpose never fulfilled. The sheer scale of this stone stirs the imagination. If we, with all our modern cranes, pulleys, hydraulics, and trucks, cannot move it, then how did they intend to? Did they overestimate their strength, blinded by ambition? Or did they possess a method, a knowledge, a technology now lost to time? In so many places across the world, from Baalbek to Easter Island, from Stonehenge to the pyramids, we find these lingering whispers of an ancient mastery of stone. But here, at Yangshan, the whisper becomes a roar. 16,000 tons, a number almost too large to picture. If cut into smaller blocks, each one could build palaces, walls, temples, and yet the builders wanted one single piece, one unified monument. Why? Stand at the base of the block and look upward. Its surface stretches above you like a cliffside, sheer and imposing. The quarry around it feels less like a man-made site, and more like a vast open-air cathedral carved in reverence to something unseen. The block itself rests quietly, but its silence is heavy, filled with questions. Was this a mistake that halted construction, or was it a realization that no human hands could carry it further? Did an emperor demand the impossible, and did his workers labor until at last they had to stop? Or did they know a secret way, one that we cannot even begin to grasp today, only to abandon it for reasons we may never uncover? Some who visit the quarry describe a strange sense of awe, a deep quiet that presses against the mind. It is not simply a stone, it is a riddle in solid form, a monument not to what was completed, but to what was attempted. The block speaks of ambition that reached beyond reason, of a will to carve something so immense that even time itself has not erased it. Thousands of years have passed, dynasties have risen and fallen, cities have grown, collapsed and grown again, and yet the Yangshan block remains exactly where it was left, unchanged, unyielding, a permanent scar of human determination. When you let yourself imagine the scene, it almost feels alive. The sun slowly crossing the sky, shadows gliding across the rough face of the stone, trees whispering at the quarry's edge, birds nesting in the cracks where once hammers struck. Nature has reclaimed the space, but the block remains, unmoved, eternal. And as the wind sighs through the quarry, it is as if the stone itself is breathing, slow and steady, waiting for an answer that has never come. Some mysteries live in fragments, broken shards, forgotten ruins, scraps of story. But this mystery lives in wholeness, in immensity. The Yangshan block was never shattered, never toppled, never stolen away. It remains exactly as it was, too large to be taken, too great to be lost. It is both presence and absence, a monument to a dream unfulfilled. And as you picture it now, this block resting in its cradle of stone, you may feel the same weight pressing gently into your thoughts. The weight of questions without answers, the calm of something far older than memory. Perhaps that is what it was always meant to be. Not a monument to be moved, but a monument to be left behind. Not a stela to stand tall, but a reminder to those who came after that human ambition sometimes stretches too far, that mystery sometimes resists explanation. And so the Yangshan block rests, still, vast, silent, and in its silence it teaches us to pause, to breathe, to let go of certainty, and to rest with the unknown.